Hey, what's going on, everybody? It's Brendan Housler with EVOQ Bike. We have Peter Moore on the podcast. He's an American track cyclist racing over in the Netherlands, also racing for a Dutch road team, looking to get on the Team USA for Team Pursuit for LA 2028 Olympics. We go into all the training details, nitty gritty, a lot of what it's like being an American over there, but I thought it was really interesting. What does he learn? He raced on AG2R's development team on the road, but then he's racing all these other track athletes from different countries. Like, what has he picked up along the way? He was an athlete with Colby Pierce for 7 years. He's now coached by Taco Vanderhorn, which a lot of you know from the road. And yeah, he's a big fan of bike packing. I don't know. I thought this was an interesting episode. Good luck with your training and racing. If you need help with coaching, Peter actually is a coach, so we plugged him at the end. EVOQ, we're coaches. We also have free blogs that give you a ton of training tips, help you get ready for the upcoming season. Good luck with your training and racing. We'll talk to you later. See ya. Where are you right now? You're
So I'm
East Coast?
in the Netherlands. Yeah.
Oh, you're back.
Yeah.
Okay. I thought you were
Yeah.
home for like the holidays. So
I was back visiting my dad's family in New York for 10 days.
okay,
Yeah.
cool. So and is it Wageningen?
Wageningen.
I was like, I'm going to kill that. I was living in Belgium for like 3 months, and my Dutch is terrible. And it took me a month to realize like J's are Y's. So people just looked at me like I had 7 heads, but I sort of looked Dutch, I guess. So everyone spoke to me in Dutch. It was just,
Yeah.
I was getting beat up. So
Yeah. And W's are V's. Yeah.
yeah, that's hilarious. Say it again. Where are you?
Wageningen.
Okay.
It,
We're going to put that in the show notes so you guys can see what it looks like. And that's why I said again. And I was like, that's not going to be right. That's like the Wisconsin way of saying it. Let's do a quick intro for people who don't know who you are. I know you as a 23-year-old track and road cyclist living in that city that you mentioned in the Netherlands. Give us a quick bio. Who are you?
yeah. So I'm Peter Moore. I'm 23 years old. I grew up in St. Paul, Minnesota. Cross-country ski racing in the winter because you can't see the roads from December to March. And then bike racing in the summer at the National Sports Center Velodrome up in Blaine, which unfortunately was torn down in 2020 and no longer exists.
Oh,
But that was kind of my junior years. I raced a little bit on the road, but not so much. I went to Bowdoin College in Brunswick, Maine, skied D1 there for a year. And then when COVID hit, I switched focus 100% to cycling. And since then, I've flopped back and forth between school, bike racing, racing on the road in Europe and in France, back to school, racing track with the national team. And in the last year or so, I've graduated college and I've settled kind of with a track focus living in the Netherlands.
so how did you find the track in Minnesota? Was there someone in your life that because it's just not a very American sport?
Yeah. So my dad signed me up for the kids class when I was 8 years old, I think. The track was originally built for the 94 Olympic trials.
Okay.
So it was an outdoor wood 250, which is really rare and was a pretty bad idea because wood rots and there's snow in Minnesota. But yeah, super niche sport, but really like beautiful community of people that I kind of spent my youth with. Yeah.
Your dad must be a cyclist then.
I would like endurance athlete, triathlon, cycling, a lot of cross country ski racing.
Cool. Okay, so that makes sense with the skiing then. And when you switched, so when you said COVID, was it just like the timing of COVID, or was there something about COVID that you're like, you know what, forget skiing, I'm going all in on bikes?
Actually, it was in the 2019 Track Junior World Championships in Frankfurt Oder in Germany. I finished 10th in the Omnium, and I thought, maybe I could do something with this. Because at that point, Track Worlds were in August, and I'd only been on my bike training since the ski season ended in the middle of March. I thought, okay, maybe if I train a little more, there's some potential here. And with ski racing, I had a few chronic injuries, and I would go to nationals, and the gap to the top guys was just kind of too much for me to see a real future.
Okay. Yeah, which aside from that, the being able to see, okay, hey, I'm not going to be one of the best in skiing. Like, it's just physiologically not going to happen. Which sport did you like better? Like the actual racing aspect, which really draws at your heartstrings the most?
Yes, I think I think there's this kind of like risk factor in bike racing that you don't get in ski racing.
Mm.
Like I've had a few crashes ski racing in a sprint or something, but there's something about the risk and the speed that just doesn't you just don't get in ski racing.
Interesting. For anyone who hasn't, I have a very small experience with Nordic skiing, but can only speak to how difficult it is and how much skill is involved. And there were some Nordic guys that kind of came in the cycling scene when I lived in upstate New York. And so they were getting me skiing similar when the roads were just covered. And it was like, okay, I'm tired of riding through snow. And man, that is just a whole different workout. And I can't even imagine the racing. Like I was nowhere near good enough to be able to like ski next to someone, let alone race someone. But I'm always curious when like Nordic people are riding now. It's like, oh, like what do you like? What's the transition like? And it just seems like two very different race dynamics, as you're saying. So,
Yeah,
um,
skiing is also like really. It's almost even master racing is just a time trial. It's just a race of attrition. People just get dropped at the front because drafting just doesn't really apply. So it's pretty
so
different.
would you say this is an accurate statement that I've heard that, and not a knock on the Nordic guys, but sometimes when Nordic guys come to cycling, they struggle with the dance and staccato of it's not just go. That's sort of how some Nordic guys tend to race, even as they get, cat ones and low level like pro am riders, they lack the tactics sometimes. Do you see that amongst yourself or other peers that have made the transition, or is that an off statement?
Yeah, I guess I don't know so many people who have made the same switch I have. I know a ton of Norwegian professional cyclists were ski racing until they were finished their junior years or so, but I can't really speak to that.
Okay. Anything from ski racing, like mantras or training, maybe not philosophies, but things that you've carried over into bike racing in your training?
Ooh, that's a good question. I think I think from ski racing, there's been I guess more focus on this kind of um, on like low level endurance training, just because there's so much sports science and research coming out of Norway, and
Mm.
skiing has been a big sport there for much longer than cycling has, as it's starting to develop in Norway. So I think this focus on really easy training was really ingrained in me from a younger age that I've definitely brought into cycling.
So, what does that mean in terms of numbers? Like, do you feel like you ride endurance rides easier than your friends? Do you ride more like most Americans never ride zone one, or they look at that as like recovery, whereas we have Euro pros on here where a lot of their base they're riding at 45, 50% of FTP, where a lot of us in America are like, there's no way I'd ever ride that easy. Is it that drastic, or how does that actually come into play in your training?
I think mostly it comes into play in terms of zone discipline.
Mm.
So when there's a 3 minute climb on a ride, that's a local KOM, you keep riding zone two in your endurance pace. You don't go for the town line sprint because it adds up. Yeah.
It definitely adds up. I like that. So you are coached by your friend, and tell me his name because I'll probably mispronounce it.
Taco Vanderhorn.
It is Taco. Okay, damn, well, that was what I was going to get. Everybody probably knows him from his Giro win. I want to say in 2021, maybe Brussels Cycling Classic. Yeah, just huge pro. He is not a track rider, correct? He's just on the road.
He's Dutch junior Madison champion
Okay.
way back when, but not since then. Yeah.
So my internet sleuthing was not good enough. So I was going to ask you, what made you pick him as your coach, since you're really focused on the track, but he's more road, or you just like good buds and have good vibes, and it doesn't, racing is racing. How did you flush that out?
So at the end of the summer in 23, I'd been working with Colby Pierce, who's a coach out of Boulder, Colorado. I think a fair number of people know him, for 7 years, and I just felt it was time for a change. And then one of my best friends, Jan Willem van Schip, another Dutch track cyclist, introduced me to Taco that summer. And Taco and I started talking, and I mentioned I was looking for a new coach. In the end, I spoke to around 10 coaches and got a really interesting perspective on different coaching styles and different methods. But in the end, the kind of familiarity that Taco and I had built up as almost friends first, and then our coaching relationship second, is what drew me in.
Without giving names, what was that process like? Talking to 10 different coaches is like a lot of different people, and you're a high level athlete. What kind of things did you look for? And then maybe what was like, oh, I like this about this person. Oh, I kind of don't like that about that person. What was that? That's an interesting thing that I think would resonate with a lot of athletes, because a lot of people who listen to this podcast might not have a coach yet, and they don't even know what this process is like that you're talking about.
Yeah, I would really push everyone to talk to multiple coaches and see what different coaching styles are out there, because if you just find your local coach and you're set with that, you just have no idea what the other options are. And maybe they're all worse, maybe they're all better, but I think it's really important to reach out to multiple people and understand different training styles, even different ways of talking about training. Because in the end, I think 7 of these 10 coaches could have gotten me to a very similar physical level, but it's really about the relationship and the energy between two people.
I love that, the energy. So is that what you picked up the most on with Taco? Like you said, like, hey, we were boys first, and then he was my coach, and it just
Yeah,
felt right.
exactly. Yeah.
Got it. So I think we were kind of chatting, and I would highly recommend people. We'll post the link to your blog, which is petermooreontheroad.com. And this is one way that Peter and I kind of connected. I can't remember initially. I was either looking through your page or I found your blog, and I always just find it interesting. You clearly have a passion for racing and kind of chronicling, or just telling the stories that you're going through. And I was like, man, this kid seems like he'd be super interesting to talk to. We were chatting, you were mentioning, you're a solo American racing in Europe, you're on the track, there's no national team support. You're racing with all these people from different countries. Just kind of, I'd be curious, what does this feel like as an American abroad without support? Like, do you feel unsupported, or do you feel like it's just such a unique situation to be in? And do you like that? Do you like kind of being a lone wolf if you maybe you don't feel that way? But yeah, keep going on that a little bit.
Yeah, I remember this would have been April or May of 2021, my first season racing in Europe. I was racing for the AG2R U23 development team. And I showed up to my first track race at this now defunct track in Ascoli Piceno in kind of central Italy. And I believe I was the only rider not from a like supported national team there. And I didn't, just having raced in the US previously, I didn't expect that there would be full national team supporting riders. And at that moment, I just thought to myself, wow, like, I'm my own mechanic, soigneur, general manager. I'm doing all this for myself. Like, what's the energy tax, like, before I even show up on the starting line? And I would say that was a little demotivating and difficult to deal with. But USAC has never really offered that kind of support, so it's not something I expected then or expect now or in the future. And it's just one of those things where you just need to accept it and move forward. And I've achieved some pretty great results since then. As a solo rider, you really kind of integrate with different national teams, especially Racing Madison. They offer you to sit in their pen for the day. You can do your warm up there, that kind of thing, and you meet a ton of people that way. So I've enjoyed it.
That's cool. So are you still racing as Team USA, or are you like a private club team?
So this past season, I raced for my UCI track team, Cheney Windows and Doors.
Okay.
For all UCI track racing, I was in their skin suit. And then for racing at Nations Cups and World Championships, I was in the national team suit.
Okay. So is that John Kroom?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. So John was just on the podcast, and me not being a track racer, I find the track super interesting, especially some of my friends have gone over to the track to try and make like LA teams. And it's just trying to understand this side of the sport. It's very different than the road, or just American disciplines, whether we're talking about mountain biking, cross. So yeah, sorry for the newbie questions. It's, is there a way then, aside from having the private, team, like being on Cheney, Windows and Doors, to get more support, you think, from USA Select? And just as you said, like, it's not something they've done. You're ready to kind of go your own route. And it's just where we're at, probably, as our nation doesn't put a huge emphasis on track, I guess we could say.
Their focus is really on team pursuit at the moment, and most of what I've done over the last 4 years has been mass start racing.
Okay.
So they've never really supported mass start racing, and that's their call. And yeah, I'm not sure if they would support it in the future. Maybe if certain riders developed into medal capable athletes towards the LA Olympics, but we'll have to see.
Mm-hmm. So talking about LA Olympics, so what is the road like from now? We're recording this December 30th, 2024. You have probably 3 years to figure everything out, or like 3.5 years till you know whether you're going or not. I don't know what that timeline is like, but is there a race like calendar in your head, or, hey, this is what I have to achieve to get to LA, or to sort of make it happen, we could say?
Sure. So the qualification period will start with World Championships in 2026. Or hold on, no, World Championships fall of 26. I'm getting confused.
No,
And
yeah, it's such a long timeline. I'm like, that's why I was even thinking through this before. It's like how you guys plan for this is so interesting.
Then we'll have 2 years of like qualification.
Okay.
In 27, and then the first half of 28. So basically, the next 2 years in terms of Olympic qualification really don't matter so much in terms of results at the actual races. Obviously, we'll be going for the best result in every race we show up to.
Yeah.
But the qualification period, we'll start with Worlds in the fall of 26, and then will be the Nations Cup season, Continental Championships, and World Championships in 27 and 28.
So sorry, go ahead.
And then, so the actual calls for Olympic selection. So this year, the U.S. men had one Omnium spot. I was named to the long team along with Grant Kuntz and Colby Lang in, I want to say, the beginning of May. Yeah, early May of this year. And then the final team wasn't announced until, I think, early June. So just a month and a half before the game started. So or 2 months. So it's really actually quite short notice.
It's so hard to, I mean, I guess you just train as if you're going, and fingers crossed, but that's, I got maybe frustrating is not the word, but so much anxiety and like, am I doing this? Am I not doing this?
Very stressful.
When over the next 2 years, what are you trying to improve on the most? Or I would say it differently. What are you trying to take away from the races? Is it a certain type of experience? Is it a certain type of skill like you feel like you're lacking? Like, you're 23, you'll be 25 in a couple years. What do you want to have in your back pocket, or maybe a little bit more of, we could say, as you go into those races that count towards the qualifying?
So the Olympic races are Team Pursuit, Omnium, and Madison. The USAC is putting a ton of focus into Team Pursuit, and I'll be trying to join that program this year. So I'm not quite sure what that will bring, and that's very heavily guided by US Cycling and the national team coaches. But on the mass start racing front, it's really about racing experience. So just racing, especially in the Madison, which is highly technical. It's just about racing as much as possible and really understanding the flow of the race and the technique. And then obviously just physical development, really, really building that aerobic capacity.
Do you feel like, since you aren't currently doing the Team Pursuit, does that put you at a disadvantage versus people who, if you would come on, you're like, oh, Team Pursuit's my jam? Do you feel like that's your step behind, or is that not a gap that you're worried about?
We'll have to see. I'll be doing a training camp with the national team, I think in early March, which is my first Team Pursuit training camp in a couple of years. I think physically I'm capable. And we'll have to see technically. I think, of course, I haven't done it in a few years. I'm at a disadvantage, but I'm backing myself.
Cool. I love that. Got to bet on yourself, man. That's awesome.
100%.
When you were talking about, hey, like, the Belgians might be like, hey, come in our pen, warm up, da da da. You're chatting with all these different racers from so many different places. What are some of the different styles of training that you've heard people talk about that maybe has perked your ear? Because like, oh wait, you and Colby were working together for a long time. Like, oh, I've never even thought about doing this. Has anything ever come on your radar? We're like, ooh, that sounds really interesting.
I guess like going through kind of the different cultures of training I've been through. When I was with AG2R 3 years ago, remember in the winter we had 3 training sessions. It was 5 hours, 5 hours with 3 sprints, and 5 hours with 4 by 10 minutes tempo, and that was it. It was basically that or nothing. Some off days, a bit of strength, but not much more variation than that. With the Dutch, where I've been training the last, let's say, 2 years, the preparation is for the track is very specific, and mirrors really what I'm trying to do, which is kind of a big block of road racing or a huge like kind of altitude training camp leading into 2.5 really intense weeks on the track, where you'll be doing maybe 4 to 5 double days in the course of a week. Maybe 2 or 3 taking an off day and then doing it again, and really just doing some on in terms of TSS, it doesn't look crazy, maybe 120 TSS per session, but when you look at what we're doing, like 3 times 20 minutes at 65 plus K an hour Madison behind the Durney, it adds up.
Yeah. Dang. So when you're doing a double day, is that like 2 2-hour sessions? Are they longer, or is that so like 240 TSS for the day maybe?
Yeah, on the track, we don't really look at it in terms of time. We'll have a set number of efforts to do, and the actual total time is not of that much interest. So we might have 3 times 20 minutes sets behind the Durney at a certain speed or with sprints, but the total time doesn't matter so much.
Interesting. When you were doing the French training, it was just the 3 workouts over and over again. Did you enjoy that simplicity, or were you like, okay, we're still doing this?
That period for me was very tough, just from a cultural perspective. Being thrown in kind of the deep end of this French culture. I speak fluent French, but it was still very difficult. I think I was more just trying to swim than really thinking about the training that much at that time.
What other language do you speak?
I can kind of get by in Spanish, and I'm slowly learning Dutch. And that's it.
Cool. How do you know French so well?
I took it in high school.
Okay.
And then this summer after my senior year of high school, I spent a month in northern France racing with a club there. And then my year with AG2R, I really became fluent.
That's awesome. So, okay. So then with LA is obviously, just in case someone's like, okay, this guy's kind of on the road, he's on the track. LA is the big goal. And you mentioned road racing, like the training now brings in these blocks of road racing. How do you split the two up? Is it road is just there to amplify the track for 2028? Are you also in the back of your mind like, well, like a lot of people make careers on the road, like I need to kind of maybe play that game also, and maybe that will change as years move forward and you're like, well, I don't know where I'm at with this pursuit team. I guess, maybe if I'm not that great at it, I go more road. Or how are they like weaving together, or like going down the road together?
That's something that I'm still trying to work out, to be honest. For a long time, the kind of career on the road line of thinking was something that definitely worried me just financially. But as I've developed on the track, I'm able to make a living just track racing. So that's not so much a worry now. So far, the road racing has really been just to benefit the track racing. But I definitely do enjoy it, and I'd like to continue racing on the road. I think this focus on team pursuit will take away a little bit from that. You see really very few guys who really, really successfully combine track and road. But at the same time, all of the top guys successfully combine track and road. So this year in the World Championship points race, I finished 4th. every rider in the top 8 was Pro Conti or World Tour. There was one Conti rider, and then me without a professional contract.
Wow.
So that's kind of the level we're dealing with, and probably something I need to focus on.
What do you think brings what do athletes bring from the road that helps them on the track? Or is it like, why are we getting such high level roadies still crushing the track when you look at like the top 10 athletes at these events?
I think it's just racing case. Just yeah, getting a Grand Tour in your legs is obviously this massive stimulus. Could I do 3 1,500 TSS weeks by myself? Maybe, probably not. Taco would say yes, yes you can. But I think it's mostly just this huge stimulus. Yeah.
Yeah. And just as you said, it's like 1,500 TSS of racing. Like, I'm sure you could do it out of like go out and have a couple huge workout days with huge, like you're going to be riding massive volume anyways. But I think that's the thing that always blows my mind is it's racing for 3 weeks. It's just like, I don't even know how guys do that. But
this kind of line of thinking was a pretty big shift in the way I understood racing and training. Last May, I did a 4-day stage race in France, and then 2 days later did some track racing in southern Germany. And across that week of road racing, I think I did something along the lines of like 2.5 hours over 450 watts. Of course, like riding really inefficiently, placing okay, but yeah, really, really throttling myself. And then that led into some of the best track racing of my life. And I thought, okay, all this intensity probably helped me here. How can we replicate this? How can we break those 2.5, 3 hours of time over 450 down to replicate that in training? And one of the things Taco has shown me, and a ton of athletes also use this training method, perhaps me more than others, is this session called the Runnestad Klapper by Dr. Runnestad. And it's probably, I'd say it's like the key session that I do on the road in the lead up to big events. And I can explain it.
I was gonna say, hit it, give it to us. We're gonna put this on Instagram. People love these.
Yeah. So, okay, a little complicated, but so you do a 20-minute easy warm up, 5 minutes threshold, then just 2 minutes easy, and then you go straight into the session. So the session is 4 times, 13 times, 30 seconds on, 15 seconds off. So 30 15s. So that adds up to 10 minutes of on time per set. And then you have 4 sets with 3 minutes recovery between each set.
So when you do the 30 on, do you go like you're trying to keep 30 same power across or full gas? And so like by the 13th, it's going to be less watts than the first, or trying to keep the same watts across the board?
It's full gas in the context of the session. So I try usually when I'm going well, I'll probably start the first set at 460. And then I try to lift throughout the effort. And I found out it's always better to go a little easier. And because you do there's so much volume of intensity, if the first set is a little easier, it's okay.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'll go 470, 480, 490, or even like 500 by the last set. And it ends up being basically 49 minutes of just full gas riding because you don't really recover.
So when we put this on, what do you think we should put the 30-second like percent FTP, because that's what everybody thinks of, like 130?
Okay. I really don't think in percent FTP at all. So
what are you thinking?
Let's see. So my 20-minute right now is probably 420. So what would that be?
It's probably like if you're doing, let's say you're doing 480, because that seemed like an average.
Yeah.
So like 115. So we'll say like 112 to 120.
Okay.
Yeah. And give people a good little range there. Sweet. I like that.
Yeah.
What about, you had said like a little bit of strength training here and there. Are you into strength training? Not worth it all year, only a couple months? How does that play into everything?
Because of my travel schedule, I would say I'm only home in the Netherlands 50% of the time.
Hmm.
It's pretty hard to get in consistent strength training. So this past year, I actually haven't done any,
Hmm.
which has killed my sprint a little bit. That's been pretty clear. Aerobically, I'm quite strong at the moment. But then with this, looking forward to Team Pursuit this coming year, I have been back in the gym the last 2 weeks now, and I'll continue to do that going into this year.
If you were at home more often, would you strength train more regularly? Is it just the aspect of all the travel?
Yeah, and it really just adds up. You only have so many hours in a day, and if you can do some long anaerobic efforts on the bike, and you get 70% of the benefit of strength training, I'm just throwing out numbers here,
Mm-hmm.
but you don't have to do another session during the day, maybe that's better.
That's official bro science facts right there, everybody. 70% of an anaerobic session is the same as a strength session. You heard it here
Write it
first.
down.
So then we're in December. Trying to think of like, so when does the track, tell me again, I think you said when the track races start. Like, where are you? Are you in like a base period right now? Or what are you up to now?
This is the other tricky thing is track racing is year round.
Okay.
If you wanted to, you could race every month of the year, pretty high level on the track.
Oh, wow.
So
How is that then? Like, do people just pick and choose, or do people just go YOLO and kind of take mini breaks?
mini breaks. So obviously, with the road riders who do track, it's a little different.
Right.
But yes, running from starting January. So most, or what's a good time to start? Nations Cup season. So starting February or March, usually you have three Nations Cups, which are World Cups, whatever you want to call them, and those will usually there's three. This year it looks like there's just one. Thank you, UCI. Um, and then we'll go from there into continental championships in April. Then there's a ton of track racing in Europe in the spring and summer.
Mm.
The racing quiets down a little bit in, let's say, September. You have track world championships October. And then after that, 6-day season starts. So you have 6 days all over Europe and the UCI Track Champions League as well. And that's running October through the end of January. So
explain 6-day season. You were just at, was it Rotterdam?
Yeah, exactly.
How did that, I was trying to look up results, and even on the UCI website, they had like junior, what was it? Junior Pursuit? No, I don't know. They had one, like, there were one event shown, but it seemed like there should be 6 days of events.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm wrong about
No,
this.
the UCI is not the place to look for 6-day results.
Where do we go for track info? Like, if someone was like, I want to learn, I want to like read up on track stuff, what's the best website?
Okay.
Hole in the market, people. Make a good track website.
Okay, Bahnwacht.nl.
God, killing me, dude. You're to send me this website.
If you go to it means track watch, but if you go to the website, it'll say this website will give you a virus. Do you want to proceed or go back to safety? And it doesn't give you
out of here.
Super sketchy. Yeah,
this is amazing.
It's actually
like back in the days of Steep Hill TV and like okay.
Yeah. So there's not really a good place to look. You just kind of have to know the races and go to those websites.
So what's the 6 day? Are you racing 6 days? Sounds like a stupid question, but is it all 6 days?
Yeah, you are. So there's only 2 actual full length 6 days left.
That's what I thought.
Ghent and Rotterdam. 6 days used to happen all over Europe. There may be 15 of them, and now there's just 2 full length ones left. The format is essentially 6 days of racing. It's all based on the Madison. The tracks are usually much smaller than UCI International Standard tracks. So you usually have 200 meter or even 166 meter tracks. And then you'll race 5 to 7 times in a night. The racing will start at 7 or 8 p.m. and go until midnight, 1 a.m., 2 a.m. And it's as much as it is bike racing, it's also a show and entertainment for drunk Dutchies and Belgians after a long day at work. So it's really like a real party atmosphere.
Have you raced at Berlin?
Yes.
Is it as wild as they bill it as? Because I'm like I actually messaged a couple of my buddies. I'm like, yo, dude, I'm talking to this guy and he's doing this. I'm like, look at this race I found. Like, we should go check this out.
Yeah. Okay. So I would say the wildest is Ghent, which is the only 6 day I haven't done yet.
Okay.
Uh, but Berlin, there's this song. I'll send it to you later. This like the song of the Berlin 6 day, and in it there's this part where everyone whistles, and they're basically handing people whistles as they walk in the door with their tickets, and you get 6,000 people with whistles in their mouths in the middle of this song, and it's just ear splitting. And this happens in the middle of a Madison. It's awful, but culture. Yeah.
Sounds so European. I love this.
Yeah.
So how did Rotterdam go?
Rotterdam went quite well. So initially, I actually wasn't supposed to ride. A Swiss guy, Claudio Imhoff, got sick, and I was called 24 hours before the race started to replace him. I ended up riding with Sylvain Dillier, a strong Swiss rider from Alpecin de Koenig. And we finished sixth on GC, which was excellent. First time I finished in the top half of a 6 day field.
Congrats.
And then we won one of the Madisons, and we're taking laps with other top teams. So I was really happy with it.
Awesome. So we have, okay. So then what do you, from all the things you said before about base training, so you are in base phase, I guess, and the first races that you're going to focus on, or you just like, no, I'm doing like more of the mini breaks and I'm just kind of getting ready to race.
Yeah. So I'd say the training between the sixes is kind of this base training, but not in the long blocks you would normally have it as, because when you race Rotterdam, you're racing. I could look at the numbers, but you're racing 2 hours a night, and it's just all high intensity. Your average cadence when you're in the race is 130 plus. So it fries you neuromuscularly, and there's not so much intensity you can do outside of that. Okay. So it is kind of easier, longer training in between, but I wouldn't really call it true base.
Yeah, interesting. There was I'm now thinking about this with like Clever Martinez, who's a big track rider and road guy in the US. But whenever there's like a cyclocross racer who tries to do both, AJ August, who's on Ineos now, he was on and he was talking about it seemed like the kid was racing all the time and how did he balance it? And he said the same thing. Like it was a lot of like these little mini breaks, and that was part of the puzzle of trying to like there's just so much opportunity to race. When do you go in and when do you pull back? And it's just something that I think most our biggest contingent is people in the US and the UK, a lot of roadies. We have just so much more structure to a season that it's way easier to play this game. Like, I've got 4 months to do my base training, and then I can go do a build phase, and then I have like my first bike race. So it's so interesting to hear you guys talk about this.
It can become too much of a good thing as well. In 2022, I managed it really poorly, and there was just so much racing, and I just kept saying, yes, that's cool, I'll go there. And then I just didn't perform so well anywhere because I just didn't really have time to train, and with all the travel, it was just exhausting. So especially the latter half of this past year and going forward, I'm like becoming very intentional about which races I'm going to, and really sitting down and planning out, let's say at least 6 months in advance. Okay, where am I going to rest? Where am I going to train? Where am I going to peak? So that I'm actually peaking where I want to, and I can have planned rest.
Mm-hmm. You had kind of talked about the energy tax before when you were your own manager, Soigné, doing everything. What is that? It was something I actually wanted to ask you, and then we kind of like riffed off on something else. That's very applicable to a lot of amateurs trying to, whether they're a Cat 3 going to their own races or someone that's trying to just make it pro. What were some of the things, were any like not shortcuts, but like ways to save energy when you've got everything to do? Like what are some, I hate the term hacks, but things that you learn that were like, okay, this is going to, like, I don't have somebody doing all this stuff for me. I finish the race. I don't go home and recover. I got to do all this crap. What are some of the things you learned through that process?
Over the years, it's become easier, especially as I return to the same locations for racing again and again, where I know the area, I know the velodrome, I know the race organizer. I think looking at with track racing, there might be 3 races in a day at a C1 kind of like standard UCI event. Really having a plan for the entire day broken down by time from like when you get up to when you're going to bed, so you just know what you're doing. Deciding on your gear before the race, knowing when you're going to pick up your numbers, when you start your warm up. In the end, there's just you can't avoid the kind of ridiculous amount of work you need to do. When you go to a C1, I bring a road bike, a track bike, a spare track bike, rollers, all of my own tools, replacement parts, all my kit, just everything. And it's just a ridiculous amount of carrying stuff around to race your bike for an hour total. But you just have to accept it. And if you enjoy it in the racing, then it's not so much of an issue.
So I never thought about this. So there's way more stuff to schlep to a track race than to a road race.
Yeah, 100%.
Oh my gosh. I'm like getting like tremors.
Yeah.
Okay, interesting. What do you think is, and maybe for the track, what's most underrated in training for track racing?
Oh, what's most underrated?
And maybe just for training, you have so much like just like
so as I've become more experienced on the track, I train less on the track, which is interesting. So most of my track training only happens before major championships, like a Nations Cup, and I'll be on the track for 2 weeks beforehand. Otherwise, in a normal week of training, I don't go to the track because it's not needed. So, but underrated, I mean, I love a good Derny session. Just some really really high speed behind the Derny with a good pilot is key. An absolutely brutal session I did with the Dutch national team before World Championships was 6 times 5 minutes on the track with 5 minutes recovery. So pretty basic VO2 session. But everything just hurts more on the track when you're in the aero position. So,
speaking of, more aero or more watts?
Both. For me,
okay, how are you gonna get both?
For me, more aero. Yeah.
What are you working on to get more aero?
The big limiter for me. So I'm using, as most track guys are now, I'm using these bars that kind of have these hooks, you could call them, on the top of the hoods, like where the hoods would be on a road bike.
Okay.
I don't know if you've seen these bars before.
No.
But you can kind of imagine just it's like a fake hood.
What are they called?
I don't even. I'll send you a link after
me.
But when you're kind of riding in this position where you're kind of in this Sphinx position, my biggest inhibitor, especially on the track, when you're pulling these G forces, is your triceps get really, really tired. Because when you're going through a bend and making a 180-degree switch in 2 seconds at 65K an hour, there's so much pressure on your triceps to keep that aero position that within 4 minutes, your triceps are screaming. So for me, it's really just working on that position and doing it all the time in training. So even on the road, every time I do an effort, I'm in the aero position.
Interesting. So, okay, so that'll definitely make you more aero on the road. What are you gonna do for more watts?
I think continuing on the path I'm currently on, and I think what I'm about to say has probably come up a ton on this show before, but fatigue resistance, like my peak values aren't increasing so much at this point. But being able to replicate that peak 2-minute power after 35 minutes of racing in a points race is really, really difficult. And a lot of it maybe isn't in track racing, maybe isn't so much. Yes, it's about fatigue resistance, but it's also about not getting fatigued. Because there are ways to race a long race on the track where you tire yourself out really quickly. But if you know what you're doing and can hide in the wheels, you can do almost no work. Like a good example, there was a C1 points race in Italy in Eastern Italy, Pordenone, this past summer that I ended up winning. The race was about 25, 30 minutes long. And in the first 5 minutes of the race, I averaged, I think, 210 watts. So really picking your moments.
Yeah, big time. What's the sorry, I just lost my train of thought here. I had someone like banging on my door. I just lost when you had mentioned the bro science before, and I was curious, is there anything else that, there's not a ton of data behind it, but it's something that you feel like just definitely makes you faster? And maybe it's something that Colby taught you, maybe it's something that you've picked up on your own. Any just like, I don't know, this just works for me.
I think this is a big taco thing, is really finding the training that gives you energy and you enjoy. So if there's a day where you need to do some kind of anaerobic effort and there's 3 different sessions you could do and that are slightly different, maybe there's one that's really specific and that's going to give you the best training effect. But if you're really excited to do something a little different, like 100% go for that one, because you train so much, you need to be excited about it.
I was going to ask you, like, with so much training, is this more of, besides just on the workout level, something that you kind of follow all the time? Like, if you're not into a session, like, sure, maybe a VO2 max is not the most like, yeah, I get to go do VO2 max, but like, do you try and make sure you're always having fun, or is there like a check-in that you give yourself so that you're actually enjoying this process versus just being like, okay, it's LA, I'm doing everything I have to do to get there? Like, I'm sure there's like a fine line to that, if you can go in on that.
Yeah, there's a definite balance, but even in the build up to a world championships, if I need to do 2 6-hour days, I'm gonna pick a city in the Netherlands and go on a 2-day bikepacking trip, rather than do 2 6-hour days, come home, eat the perfect dinner, because I'm gonna enjoy doing that little bikepacking trip so much more.
Do you like bikepacking?
Yeah, love it.
Is that a thing you do often?
Definitely, yeah.
Give me the lowdown on this. Is you pack up panniers and you
No,
go
not even
camp, or
panniers. I have like a Apidura like under saddlebag,
okay?
and you can only really do it when the weather's good, but you pack your tools, 2 kits, a toothbrush, and one set of casual clothes, and you're good to go.
So you
So I've
sleep
done,
in a hotel?
yeah, or like hostels. It's really easy in Europe.
Yeah.
It's a really fun way to get a ton of volume done.
Okay.
Yeah.
You got 1 more hour in the day. What are you gonna do?
1 more hour in the day. Hop on the rollers. No.
That's not what I saw coming.
No, probably clean up the kitchen a little bit, do some reading. Nothing too exciting.
That's good. I think like a little bit more recovery is probably good. What are you recently reading?
Ooh, I actually just started The Rule of Saint Benedict,
Okay.
which is as in like the Saint Benedict's rules on how to live as a monk in his monastery in the year 500.
Are you about to become a Benedictine monk? If
No, no, but I find it interesting. So
yeah, cool. Man, this has been really interesting. I'm super excited to be able to like follow along with your path, and over the next 4 years basically. What's the best way? So you're blogging, and what kind of started the blog? Do you just like writing? Do you like, and because I was going to ask you, what's the best way for people to keep up with you? Instagram, the blog? Are you doing TikTok? Like, where else can people follow along with the whole journey?
I think the blog is the best way to follow along. PeterMooreOnTheRoad.com. I started that when I first started racing in Europe, just to keep people back home updated. And since then, it gets a decent bit of traffic. And continues to be a nice way to keep friends and family updated. And then Instagram, a little less so, but I do use it sometimes.
Why less Instagram?
Social media is just not so much my thing, which can be an issue with sponsors,
Mm.
and I probably need to work on that. But that's where we're at.
I'm, I'm just, yeah, I'm always curious. I think social media is a plus and minus. So I think you probably have a good balance of it. Like it's just, yeah, it's a crazy, it's a tool, but man, it's a time suck. So you got a lot of other things going on. Any final thoughts or comments for the people? I really appreciate this, man. This is super interesting. And I know a lot of people will be rooting for you in the coming years.
Oh, can I plug my own coaching business?
Hell yeah, let's go.
Okay, yeah. More endurance coaching, a page on my website, petermooreontheroad.com/coaching. Happy to coach people of all backgrounds, road, track. Yeah, send me a message. There's a contact form. Let me know.
Let's for all the people listening who are like, well, this guy just interviewed all his coaches. What's your coaching philosophy?
The coaching philosophy is, I think, primarily what I talked about with this kind of bike packing, picking the fun anaerobic session, really understanding what is going to bring you energy, because training is not always fun, but you can make it fun.
Love it. Hell yeah. Check
Yeah.
out his Peter Moore and MOORE on the road.com. We'll obviously put a link into this. Check out the coaching, follow along, send him a message, especially if you got some inspiration from this episode. Everybody, good luck with your training and racing, and we'll talk to you soon.